Good morning and welcome to SFG Top Performance. I want to thank you all for attending today. And with us today we have our regulars. We have Jason, Derrick, and Charles. We have a lot to cover today. We have aerial spraying with fungicides. We have our second pass on soybeans coming in. And we have what we're seeing in the fields and what's happening around us today, as well as an update on equipment and the building processes going on within SFG. And to start us off today, Derrick, would you like to talk about the aerial spraying of the fungicides?
Yes. So this week's been a really big week for corn spraying with the airplanes. You know, it got started there Monday, Tuesday. We've had a lot of good luck getting that started, and wanted to just make sure if anyone's interested in aerial spray, now's the time to do it. For corn, we have about a 2 to 3 week window with when the corn was planted. You know, we're still going to be in that window when tassels are coming out, but we're going to want to get those fields lined up, because now the airplane, we're about a week out already as of today, and with this rain, that's going to put them a little bit farther behind. And there's been a lot of interest in the countryside, so I think it's going to be a really big fungicide year. And because everywhere around the corn looks pretty darn good, and I think with the price of corn out there and with some potential we have, I think we need to protect those bushels and go after some that we can push some fields and go get some more. So we've had a lot of good talks with fungicide, and there's been a lot of interest. So just if your field's ready and it's tasseled, make sure to get it lined up. The other thing that we have going on this week is that it's been the second round of tissue sampling for all the field forecasting tool acres. So what we're doing is we're trying to get in there right at about tassel time, after the corn's been in their rapid growth stage, so we get a good accurate representation of what's going on in those fields. And what we do with the second round of tissue sample, it really calibrates the model for the yield range predictions later in the season. And we want to look at what nutrients were deficient now, because if corn has deficient nutrients now, the soybeans are going to be deficient in those nutrients next year, especially if we don't put fertilizer on before the soybeans. So it's something we like to look at this time of year and compare to our soil samples, or if you don't have soil samples, get those lined up for the fall, and then you can compare both of them and see how it looks. Because if a tissue sample is low in potassium and it comes back a soil sample is low in potassium, that's pretty easy way to say, it's going to pay to put on a little more fertilizer, that sort of thing, get a lot more bang for your buck rather than just blanket spreading at a removal rate.
Derrick, we're doing the field forecasting on the corn. Do we do anything comparable on soybeans? And the reason I ask that is some of the fields of beans that I've seen out in the countryside just look a little tougher than I'd like to see. They're a little bit more uneven, a little bit colored differentiation across the field. Is there anything we could test on those, whether it be field forecasting or something different?
Yeah, so the field forecasting tool does actually have a set on soybeans where you take tissue samples and it gives a yield range prediction. Where we've geared it more towards corn just for the in-season nitrogen applications. So for me, I like the field forecasting tool specifically better for corn, but we still do tissue samples on soybeans. We do quite a bit of those, and it shows NPK, all the secondaries and micros as well. And now with soybeans, you can get a good representative sample now. If some of the micros are low and you're thinking about a fungicide, you can still correct some of those and put a foliar on. So it's a really good idea to get a tissue sample of soybeans now, especially with boron that we've talked about in the past.
So how are the products been looking that we have out in the field today? From Jason, what's a crop scout seeing for us out there, and where's that going?
Yes, I want to start off with, I've had a few farmers in the last couple of weeks ask me, how do you get to so many fields and see all these things that you're talking about in your podcast? Well, the simple answer is I personally don't go to every field until there's a problem or I see good things. We have a tremendous a group of crop scouts. We have one lady and then my son, who was working part-time right now, doing that and working on other things. But they go to the fields and they see a problem and they let us know where the problems are. And then Derrick and Mark and our CCA agronomists, Greg and Taylor and Kent and Jeff Fox, that can all make it out and look at problems in the field. So we have a huge group of people looking at your field. It's not just Derrick and Mark and Charles and myself. So that's how we get to see so many things, is this large group that SFG has to look at your field and help and see where problems are at. And then not only do we have this group, we have Charles's operation crew with the sprayers. We have a very good communication network. They'll call hey, there's a problem in his field, will you go look at it? Or there's a cow in his field eating a lot of corn or beans, will you call the farmer and let him know? Or a goat in the field, So we have a very good network within our company of crop scouting to make sure your fields are getting looked at. So that is how we find these things that are really good. And Derrick and Mark and I don't go to every field, but we do go to the ones where there's a problem or things are really good and try to look at it. So to answer some questions, I hope that we have a very good network for that. So some things that are looking really good now. I hate to be negative all the time like I've been the last few times with our weather, but some super grow and complemented with other nitrogen sources is looking very good in fields today. I was in a field yesterday that, it was 90 some degrees. We walked in, it was cool. This corn was pollinating and it looked tremendous. There was the guy had 6 and 6 all the way through it. And in every field we walked into, one number had 16 around and the other one had 20 around. And the ones that had 16 around also had a second ear. And if the weather stays like it is, there will be some corn come on that second ear, which sometimes we don't see, but it's pollinating there and it looks like it's going to produce a healthy second ear. So if we keep getting moisture and get the right conditions, I think there'll be 2 nice years on the ones that had 16 around. So that's, the super grow was, I don't see any sulfur striping. I don't see any nitrogen deficiencies in the corn that has a half rate of super grow followed by another nitrogen source. So that product is working very well in the fields I've been in the last week or so that I've looked at. It's looked good all year, but it's still excelling with tasseling going on. Another product is Micronutrient Packs. I don't see, I don't see the coloring in the leaves, and they look tremendous. Derrick talked about tissue sampling, and I did a almost tassel tissue sample the other day and compared it to a soil sample, and we put this micro pack on it, and the tissue sample was all in the positive. Everything was good. We didn't need to put any more on, so that showed me that the micro pack did its job for the soybeans or the corn this year that we applied. So.
And the micro pack was with the dry fertilizer.
It was with the dry fertilizer pre-plant, exactly. There's a lot of different options for them. Mm-hmm. So with this tissue sampling, we can apply it a lot of different ways. Like the ones we're doing in corn now, we can apply for soybeans next year. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that's really looking good. And everything we've done it on alfalfa, we've had some fields that had yellow spots and they looked terrible, but the micro packs turned it around. And the second cutting is just as good as the first cutting in a lot of the fields we put it on.
And see one little quick plug about the micros. What I really like about, so we take the tissue samples and then we see if there's a problem and say, hey, we're deficient in zinc, manganese, boron. Yeah, we can go put a foliar on and fix it. But if we're deficient, that means our crop was missing it at one point. So putting on the dry with the dry micros with the dry fertilizer before, we were getting those micros on the field, and then so they're not going to be deficient. And then the only thing in season we really need to worry about is boron when it's tassel time or flower time. So that's a really good idea.
Yes, Derrick is exactly right. He summed up a lot of things that, yep, they're doing extremely well. So another thing that I've noticed is all winter long we talked about a good pre and a good post application plan. And any pest, any herbicide problems we've had has been when there hasn't been a good pre applied and not a good post with residual activity applied. If it was a good planned 2-pass program, all of them seem to be excelling this year. So that's tremendous. Usually there's things that there's this doesn't work or that doesn't work, but this year everyone that's a planned 2-pass program with residuals is
good,
doing very well.
Good.
So I talked a little about pollination, and we've had perfect conditions for that. Cool, damp, high humidity. Everything's set up for a good crop and pollination. So I think our corn looks to be doing very well. I do see this hail damage. I've been in several fields that have that. And like we talked about before, the leaves above where that hail damage occurred are in good shape. They look healthy. All the tares are down below the ear, and we could run into a problem if we have a huge windstorm later on, but right now it looks really good, and the new growth looks really, really good. Derrick, you've been into fields and looked at a lot of seed numbers. What can you tell us about the seed?
So really just to piggyback off what you're saying, corn really everywhere is looking good. We don't have disease in it. I haven't seen any nitrogen firing up. And just to go back to the half rate of super grow followed by nitrogen, I was worried. We had a lot more urea put on this year, and I was really worried with that 3-week dry weather that even with the treated urea we're going to see some volatilization. But I still in those fields I haven't seen any any nitrogen firing as of yet. And we sometimes, this time of year, we can see some, so we still got a long ways to go for it. But even the the hillier, tougher acres, those ones with super grow on it, those stayed dark green, and hopefully that supplemental nitrogen season is still there. And right now it looks like it was. But soybeans around the area are a little more hit and miss. They've been this wet weather patterns hurt them a little bit, especially as we get south of G76 and down in our southern territory. We're really seeing the wet seeping side hills for water, and really seeing some tougher items in my plots on soybeans. What I've been seeing is, as a whole, the earlier 2.6, 2.7 range of maturity for soybeans haven't handled the wet feed as much. They've been stunted a little bit. They've been getting a little more disease in them, and that could be just a fluke thing, or could be that we're planting the later maturities. They're handling the diseases a little bit better and that sort of thing. So we're still monitoring those. It's growing out of it a little bit, but it's nothing too bad. But it's just some observations though. They're just not as good as in our 3.4 to 3.6 range. A couple things we've seen in soybeans this week is this yellowing, and you see where the water's sitting. And we've been trying to decide what it was, and what we're thinking is that it's some Phytophthora Root Rot. And so I wanted to put a little plug on that, what that disease is and kind of what it looks like. What we see is this yellowing in the field, and then you see a rot starting on the roots and about 4 to 6 inches up the stems where it gets dark on there. And then some soybeans will actually be dead, and then some are just stunted, turning a little bit yellow. Hopefully we can catch a little dry weather and it grows out of it. But we're actually sending plant samples up to Iowa State to test them, to actually confirm that what we think it is with this Phytophthora Root Rot. And there's multiple strands. I think there's about 40 or 50 strands of Phytophthora, and different seed traits protect different strains. So we're going to actually take the next step, see if we can identify the strain that's in a certain area. I have a couple fields that are down in the Lacona New Bern area that we're going to send in and see if it's the same strain, and then hopefully we can decide which soybean variety to plant based on that, or which ones to avoid based on that, to help better place soybeans. Because that Phytophthora, it can stay in the soil for 10 to 15 years, and it feeds on soybean residue, and but if you have the right conditions, it likes warm, wet conditions, it'll just pop up one year. So it's one that's more prevalent in no-till fields, and we deal with a lot of those. So it's something that we're going to see a lot.
With the conditions we've had with the wet, moist conditions, are there any other diseases that we should be looking for, whether it be corn or beans?
So with warm, wet diseases coming in on corn, I mean, it's conducive for some gray leaf spot coming in. I haven't seen any, except for maybe a lesion or two, really on the bottom of the plants. Nothing on corn. I haven't really seen anything concerning disease or insects, but we do have the conditions for it. It's been humid. It's been warm and wet. The biggest thing is the prolonged leaf wetness. So these humid days we've had where the canopy's not getting dried out, I mean, it could pop up in 2 weeks, and then that's why we're pushing fungicides right now. Because if we get past brown silk, if we get 2 weeks, and then now the diseases start, then it's too late at that point. Once you see it, we really need to hit that corn in this window, or else it's not worth the investment.
Okay.
A couple other trials we have seen that are working really well are sulfur trials on soybeans. We have strips out there that not seeing anything night and day difference visually right now, but I'm hoping we can see some really good benefits from in-season sulfur there on soybeans. And we have the two of them I'm excited about, our nitrogen trial demonstrations between UAN and our top dress urea, and it was put on right during that really dry spell. So
Okay. The sulfur you have on, you're testing on beans, how's that being applied? Is that a dry or a liquid, or how are you putting that on?
So this year we used dry fertilizer grade AMS to put on the soybeans, and you almost got to be a little careful with it because it is a high salt content, so you don't want to get too much going on, and you could see a little bit of burn in season. But that's the best in season Sulfur because it's the most readily available. It's the same one we want to use on alfalfa or hay ground in season, and we get the best. You get all the good out of the sulfur that year, whereas if we use dry sulfur 90, it takes 2 to 3 years to break down, and even gypsum that we've used in the past, it takes about a year to break down. Just needs more water. So that AMS in corn and beans is most readily available. That's the one you want to use in season.
Okay, great. So Charles, update us on scales. I see that at Knoxville here we have a scale getting worked on. I understand there's one going to be set up in Centerville shortly. Equipment, is it getting put away? We still have some spraying going on. What's happening?
Yep, there's plenty going on. The scale here at Knoxville, we had to pull the deck off. It was showing some age up underneath and rusting out some beams, and wanted to take it off, and in the process of replacing it. That's going to be a couple-week project. Got to get cleaned up, painted, and of course once you open it up you find more things you just won't fix. And it's been there for almost 30 years, so let's try to make it last another 30 or 40 years. Centerville is getting a brand new scale. It's going to be a new above ground scale, be similar to the Melcher scale. It'll be out south of the existing scale, so that'll be a nice improvement for them down there. Other equipment wise, over at Milo, they're in the process. They got the old elevator out of the way outside and waiting on equipment to show up so they can start assembling it back together. That should be going. They were supposed to drop equipment off this week. I don't know if they actually showed up, but it's supposed to, in the next week or so, start assembling back together. So that'll go rather quick. They got all the old stuff out of the way and get ready to. Looks like we're going to grow a heck of a crop, so we better make sure everything's working. So, other work-wise, spraying. We're trying to finish up spraying, which this week hasn't been very good, ideal weather for it. But the airplanes have been doing a lot more spraying than we have. But here in the next week or so, we'll be done with herbicide spraying, and then we'll probably start spraying fungicide on beans. That'll be coming up pretty quick. We got the last of the side dressing I think got done this week, urea-wise, and we did a little bit of nitrogen last week. So as far as I know, all the side dressing should be done. Everything should be well tall enough that we can't get through it. But that'll sum her up.
Okay, well that sounds great. Sounds like a very busy last couple of weeks that everybody's been putting in here. And a lot of the plots we talk about that they discussed and how they're looking after fields and how we're taking care of equipment. A lot of that comes from customer focus. And the customer expectations are higher than ever before. And you, our valued customers, are scrutinizing our business more intensely than ever. You're comparing your experience with our SFG brand to the easy, fast, and personalized experience you're having at the best of the best. SFG continues to stay customer focused. And it starts by deepening our understanding of what customer focus means and building an effective customer focus strategy. And you say, well, what is customer focus? Well, the customer focus means putting our customers first. SFG's customers focused business fosters a company culture dedicated to enhancing customer satisfaction and building strong customer relationships. But customer focus isn't a responsibility that falls only on customer support or any single team. To earn from you your entire business, while customer service skills are a key to customer focus, our customer focused company shows that the customer experience matters across organization at every step of the customer journey. And this includes the honesty of making and marketing campaigns, the transparency of our pricing modules, the ease of our sales cycle, the quality of our actual products and service. But becoming a customer-focused company doesn't mean we suddenly perfect a business that never makes mistakes. That kind of mindset isn't practical and isn't honest. Rather, customer focus is important for building customer relationships that are more human. This involves learning from you and utilizing those value insights to get better. This is what SFG is trying to do for you. I want to thank you for watching today. I appreciate the business that you have offered us in the past and what you're going to allow us to have in the future. Have a great week.